Welcome to Minerva Meets. I'm your host, Sonal Chandler, and this is episode 25. I am so excited to be kicking off season three. And this has been just such a wonderful experiment for me, if you will. And before we get started, I wanted to give a shout out to my niece, Jasmine Shaw, who has been such a great supporter. And she's been listening to all the episodes and giving me feedback. So, Jasmine, if you're listening, thank you so much for your support. All right, let's get started. We are starting this season with a topic that often doesn't get enough attention until something goes wrong, your reputation. So, when a cyber incident occurs, the technical response is critical, right? Because we want to make sure that things are getting back to normal, if you will, as quickly as possible. But leadership decisions around communications often determine what that long-term outcome looks like. So today's episode is about the decision-making layer and why this matters. And today I am joined by such a wonderful guest, Casey Boggs, founder of Reputation Us. Casey and his team help organizations prepare for and respond to high stakes situations, particularly when it comes to cyber incidents and reputation and trust around these incidents, and how do you manage that risk? So, Casey, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here and for being my first guest for 2026.
Yay.
Yeah, let's start by learning a little bit more about you and Reputation Us. Tell us who you are.
Well, good. Well, thanks for having me. Really do appreciate the thought that went into inviting me on the show. Appreciate it. And season three, congratulations to you. That's no joke.
Thank you. Thank you. I
So
know it's crazy.
I know. Now, if I was the first person ever, then I'm like, okay, maybe we have some work to do. But season three, that's good stuff. And then I will also say hi to Jasmine as well. Might as well, right?
Thank you. Yeah, there you go.
Well, good. Well, a little bit of background on me and Reputation Us. We are a reputation, public relations, and crisis mitigation firm. It's just really a fancy way of saying we're a public relations firm, but really we tackle the reputation side, which is now an insurable risk. Yeah, now
Oh,
that
wow.
reputation is an insurable risk. So reputation risks have been certainly on the upswing recently, and our firm focuses on that reputation risk. It's this kind of nebulous thing, right? What is
Hmm.
reputation side? So, uh, quick background on myself: I am a recovering journalist. That's what I like to tell people, and what that means is that I used to work with NPR and NBC back in the day, and that's really important because not so much on the communication side and reputation management, but you look through the lens differently as a
Hmm.
journalist. What is it? Why is it important to your audiences? And this could be internal audiences, external audiences, today's influencers. You see the world from their eyes, right, as opposed to the
Hmm.
company's eyes. So that really helps us for our clients to see the world just a little bit differently. What's in the hearts and minds of the public? And then been doing this for quite some time in the world of PR. Was with some pretty large PR firms, Wagner Edstrom and Weber Shandwick. Big mouthful, I know, but they're two of the largest in the world. And then I cut my teeth into communications and crisis management during my time at AIG.
Okay.
I was director of PR for AIG. So yeah, so my firm is where we have 14 people and helping across the country, if not the world, and yeah, talking about the reputation management and crisis mitigation, more specifically as it pertains to cybersecurity.
Yeah, this is great and such an exciting topic because being in cybersecurity, creating disaster recovery plans and incident response plans is part of the work that we do. And as if you're ever in an incident, and I've been in one before, there's always somebody that's like, what are we going to say?
Right.
Who do we say it? When's the right time? How do we say it? And there's just so much that goes around that I don't think many people realize. So I wanted to get you on. So let's dive in
Okay.
and let's kind of start with some framing, right? Like why reputation matters in cybersecurity, right? So when you think about reputation risk in a cyber incident, how does it typically show up for organizations?
Yeah, multiple ways. It's a loaded question, but let me
Yeah.
do my best to unpack that, right?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. So cyber instances are pretty complex, and they have been even more so for the last, couple of years. But if you put it into the framework here, reputation risk, you really combine personal harm, loss of trust, and
Mhm.
public scrutiny, and there's a way that most operations, figure the reputation issues here. So personal harm, loss of trust, and public scrutiny, right? And so why those three? Well, first is cybersecurity. The failure feels personal.
Mhm.
And when a factory breaks down or a shipment is delayed, then customers are inconvenienced, right? But when
Right.
data breach happens, people feel violated, right?
Yeah.
Their identity and finances are, and their sometimes their health data or your private communications. I mean, your personal information. I mean, it's about as important as it gets. That's
Yeah.
exposed, right?
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
emotional dimensions, intensifies this outrage. And there's a long-term memory when it comes to both customers or even staff about the failures, and that's when it gets personal. So when you start hitting the personal side of
Hmm.
these this risk, that's when you get folks' attention. It's not just money. There's something a little more deeper here, right?
Right. Right. I love that long-term memory because
Yes.
I've never really sort of said that when it comes to this reputation. And you're right. I mean, if you think about all of these social media posts and comments, that stays forever,
Right.
right? People go back and will talk longer about a bad experience than a good experience, right?
Truth, 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 truth. Yes.
Well, why does cybersecurity tend to create a greater reputational exposure than, say, operational issues?
Well, it depends, right? And again, I mentioned a little bit of the personalization of it all, but the trust and public scrutiny, right?
Hmm.
There's a little bit of that. So if an attack happens, you know, it, if there's something internally that happens, you kind of not way cover up, but you can say, okay, we can handle this internally. It's operation, right? We can
Right,
huddle this,
right.
we can different things, but now it's outside. The customers are talking. The broader prospective customers are talking. The public is talking. It's like, uh-oh, we got ourselves an issue, right? And so there's
Right.
an element of trust, right? An
Yeah.
element of trust. Customers assume that companies are silently protecting their data every day, and then when this invisible thing is broken, trust is broken.
Yeah.
Stakeholders don't just question the incident; they start
Yeah.
questioning the competency of the company, the integrity, the leadership. So it gets a little more systemic, right? And
Yeah.
trust is much harder to rebuild than
It totally,
the
yes.
revenue, right?
Absolutely. In fact, what comes to mind is the whole the CrowdStrike incident
Yes.
that we had, right? Like, I can't tell you how many people I spoke to, and they would all say, "Oh, the Delta incident,
Mm,
the Delta Airlines incident," and I would always go back, "It's not just Delta." Like, and it's not their incident,
right.
right? And so it's just sort of how people talk about it, right? It's about that public perception, if you will. And which brings me to my next question around public perception after a cyber incident, right? So
Mhm.
after an incident becomes public, how do customers and stakeholders usually react?
Well, usually that's the hard part because depending on the the
Yes,
severity of it
yes.
all. But I think it's first the reactions, usually emotional response.
Yeah.
There's concern, right? There's anger, there's fear. All those
Yeah.
emotions are flaring up, right? And especially if the
Yeah.
personal or sensitive data is involved, people immediately ask, was my information mine? Because they think about me. They think about I
Right.
do this kind of the world revolves around me, right?
Yes.
And if they feel that their information was compromised and incapacitated, then you get yourself an issue. And then
Right.
the second piece here to your question about the judgment. Stakeholders assess how prepared and transparent the organization appears, right? Are you prepared for such a thing, or did you really have the speed and clarity and empathy and communications, right? And so all this is factored into it. The last part here is recalibration of trust. Customers decide whether the organization has earned the right to keep their data.
Mhm.
Very important.
Yeah.
Did you earn it, right? So
Right.
you had it, right? Now did you earn it, right? Cybersecurity or otherwise. I mean, you earn the trust of a company. Anywhere from, I don't know, Chick-fil-A to, I don't know, a bank, whatever,
Hmm.
you've earned their trust. You became a customer for some reason. But when at all that trust has been broken, ooh, that is very hard to recover from if it's been
Yeah,
broken.
absolutely. So when when these events happen, you know, what are some missteps that you actually see organizations make or take early on before they decide to engage someone like Reputation as?
Well, I think missteps really is going silent or delaying a response.
Mm, yeah, yeah.
That is, I think, one of the bigger ones. You brought up early in your conversation about, who to contact, when to contact them, where to contact them, all those really critical questions.
Hmm.
But sometimes it's the when. The when is one of the bigger issues I see some missteps happening. When did
Yeah.
they respond to the inquiry, right? When uh, did they know about this and then did they take like a week to respond?
Oh
That's
gosh,
when
yeah.
that's when the issue is now on the company. Did
Yeah.
they take time, too much time to respond? It's like, wait a second, this is my information. You didn't tell me this is actually happening. It's okay
Mhm.
if you're still investigating the matter in a different aspect, but didn't, you didn't allow that information. So you're over reassuring before the facts are known. That's really important here. But you focus too much on the technical difficulties, or in your world, you know this better than I do. Oh
Mhm.
my gosh, this just happened. I need to take care of the technical side, the instant response side,
Right.
how this is going to affect the operations. From a communication side, almost in a way it takes a priority, right?
Yeah.
Their
Yeah.
trust and communications, those are really should be paramount in all this.
Absolutely. Are
Yeah.
there any guidelines around like when is like, if there is a certain type of breach that's X number of people are affected that the communication needs to go out by a certain amount of time after the incident is detected?
Yeah, I wish there was a pithy, quick response to that. It all
Yeah.
depends, right? But I'm the big advocate of at least, regardless of size, it's important to
Hmm.
communicate to that affected party. And and I think it's important to know that your right size of communication doesn't have to be, hey, it only affected two or three or a couple dozen
Right.
customers, and we have to tell all of our customer base. No, but at least if it happens to them, you might as well tell them, right? You might
Right.
as well let them know that it happened. Was what we're doing about it. At least you're going to get some kudos for being communicated to them. So I don't think the size really matters. I think just the timing goes back to that timing aspect. Now the legal side, which probably going to be a discussion later on for our podcast, but the
Yeah.
legal side is tap dance between what can legally be permissible to communicate to what
Right.
we should do, what we can do
Oh yeah.
legally. So those types of tap
Yeah.
dances are important. But I do think that at least letting them know that it happened is
Yeah.
important.
Yeah. And you mentioned we were talking about like the timing, right? And I
Hmm.
think that the longer you wait to communicate, there's this narrative that starts forming. And once that narrative is out, and especially now with social media, it is so hard to change that narrative once it's out there. Like once
That's
it's
right.
out in the ether, like forget it, right?
Yeah,
So
the old proverbial if it's tough to put toothpaste back in the tube.
exactly, exactly. So how do you manage something like that? Like how quickly does that form? Does that narrative form? Is it within hours? Like tell me a little bit more about
Yeah, it forms fairly quickly once it comes into play, and that's is really the important aspect is to know where that information is coming from, right?
that. Mm,
Ideally, it'd be nice to have everything perfect and aligned, and the
right.
communications coming through your communications team, and they give it and they shared information, but that doesn't work like ever.
Right.
It's
Right.
coming through
Yeah.
social channels. The information's coming through the customer calling or just the public, media, internal discourse. So all this has come from different areas. So the challenge ahead of time is to find how or develop a centralized area to communicate, right? Okay,
Yeah.
regardless of where it's coming from, how do we centralize this and then make sure we are prioritizing our communications, right?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
I will mention one aspect that's maybe a rule of thumb for maybe your listeners in general, but we take an up, inside out approach to our communications. Up,
Oh, tell us
inside
more.
out. Yeah, so up means it says whatever happens, you should notify your up. And so which that could be your executives,
Mm-hmm.
your leaders, right? Your board of directors, your managers, whatever it is, your infrastructure of your small and mid-sized company. But everyone should know, be very aware of what's going on before you go further. So that's the up. The inside, it depends on your company, but the inside is your staff for sure, letting them know
Mm-hmm.
what's going on, what's at stake here, what's next steps are, and that's the different communications. But the inside is also your customers. Letting them
Right.
know, maybe in the right
Right.
size form of everything, but that they are a priority. The staff and then your customers, and then the out is other folks because this could be vendors, this could be your public, this could be your website, social media, whatever. But what we find is that there's a tendency to go out, inside, up, or something of that nature. But
Right.
if you
Right.
get in this discipline of up, inside, out, it's a good flow. And it has to happen fast, but at least you have some degree of everyone knows you control the narrative, and that's really critical.
Wow. Okay. So what you just shared with us was an important framework.
Hmm.
So listeners, I'm going to repeat it. Up, inside, out. The up, inside, out framework. There you go. So Casey
That's it.
just shared a really good nugget for us.
That's right.
And I think that's really great. So thank you. That's a great tip.
Yeah.
So, kind of taking that framework and let's expand, but really from a preparation perspective,
Sure.
right? So, with any sort of incident planning, you always have to do tabletop exercises. There's a lot of things you have to do in advance so that in
Hmm.
the event that something happens, everybody knows. There's a person assigned, everybody knows their role. It's like fire drills, right? When we were
That's
growing
right.
up.
That's right.
Tell us a little bit more about how do you prepare in advance before something goes wrong?
So there's two different ways to unpack that question. I want to give you one, just the narrative of it, and then I'm going
Yeah,
to give you an example because I think folks
sure.
are drawn to an example. But I think it's important to really at least have a plan of attack, a clear incident response narrative and messaging framework. What would sound like your brand? What would be the voice that you would have about the incident that would be uniquely to your brand, right? It's not this formulaic or even legalese issue what's going on, but actually have a messaging framework, right?
Hmm.
And then these are also pre-approved holding statements,
Okay.
stakeholder
Yeah.
templates, those types of things. Defining your spokesperson and
Right.
decision-making processes. And remember the up, inside, out, right? It's spokesperson. When you hear spokesperson, it sounds like you're, have a microphone in your mouth and you're talking to this media. I'm talking
Yes.
about more lines your spokesperson, who is a credible source, and it doesn't have to be the CEO. She might
Sure.
be, taking care of operations. It could be someone else who's articulate and can offer the insights, right?
Yeah.
But having that spokesperson is really key. And then social media monitoring. How do you connect with them? How do you communicate effectively? And then just in general preparation. So the example I'm going to share is primarily sports related.
Okay.
I'm a big
Ooh, I
sports
love
fan.
sports. So this is a
Good,
great, this is
excellent, good.
great. This is great.
So the sports aspect is really key. So before you go into the field of battle, the game, right? The big game you're about to play, you don't know what the game's going to be like.
Yeah.
You have no idea the X's and O's, the weather, the officiating, whatever. There's a lot of
Right.
different variables. But preparation for that, you have a game plan, right? You have the X's and
Yeah.
O's, you have your playbook. How would we respond to that type of thing? So have a plan would be really key in knowing roles and responsibilities, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you practice that. You practice that play. So you have, the defense and the offense working together. Like, what would happen if, what would we do? Boy, if you fail, might as well fail on your own side right now in practice. And you simulate these. It's almost game time. Where are we exposed? Let's really make sure that we polish our Achilles heels. Those types of things. That's really
Mm-hmm.
important. And then I put this framework in the sports because we represent an NBA team and they have the same mentality. Reputation is very, very important to them. And
Oh,
so,
interesting.
yeah, they want to make sure that they fail on their own time. So they have us come in and simulate the craziest of reputation issues,
Really? How cool.
cybersecurity issues, deep fakes, issues that are going on with the stadium. What would happen if the season ticket holders, all their information is breached? What would we do? How do we handle
Right.
that?
Right.
Let's not fail in the fog of war during a crisis. Let's fail on our own
Right.
time, right? So
Right.
that's the type of
Right.
thing. Translate that to small and mid-sized businesses, which I believe is the core of your audience here.
Hmm.
Is think about we have a lot to lose here. We
Yeah.
cannot jeopardize trust. So let's think through this. How can we fail on our own time? Take that
Hmm.
time to fail on yourself. And I use fail as a kind of metaphorically, right? But
Sure. Sure.
let's make
Yeah.
sure that you expose your weaknesses. So I hope
Absolutely.
that helps. It kind of gets you that preparation side and what you should be thinking about.
Yeah, I mean, having a plan in place is just so key. And I work with organizations, and oftentimes they're so excited to put the plan together, but then the actual test and the drill to make sure that it all works correctly
That's right.
is something that sort of is an afterthought.
That's right.
And then the event happens, and then everybody's just running around, and we're like,
Yeah.
like
What?
chickens
What?
with
What?
their heads.
That's
Like,
right.
wait a
That's right.
minute, like, let's pull the plan out,
That's
right?
right.
So I can't underscore enough what you're saying about not just the plan, but also doing the testing around that, and failing on your own. Take the
Mhm.
time to do that. Um, how important in this preparation is this alignment between different groups, such as your security team, your legal team, communications, and the leadership? Like how important is that?
Well, I would say on a scale of 1 to 10, it's probably an 11 as far as importance is concerned. But
Sure.
misalignment is one of the biggest reasons organizations stumble during a
Hmm.
cyber incident. So,
Yes. Yeah.
the cyber incident, you're not going to be blamed for the cyber incident itself, typically, because people are pretty jaded by it. It's like
I know,
the bad
right?
guys are out there or whatever. But if if you fail on the preparation or this alignment part of it all, that's on
Hmm.
you, right? So,
Right.
if cybersecurity, your team, the incident response team, the legal and communications leadership aren't aligned in advance, you get delays, right? You have conflicting messages. You have internal debates as far as what to do and how to do it, and timing, and then
Hmm.
speed and clarity of what it is that's happening. So the confusion quickly becomes visible to customers,
Yeah.
employees, and regulatory and media. So it's like, oh, what's going on over there? And it's like, oh, we look like the head cut off, right? Like, ah.
Yes.
So
Yes.
alignment exists, ahead of time.
Yeah.
Decisions are faster, messages are consistent. Organization speaks with one credible voice. All these things are really shows an improved response. Now, there might be some curveballs, no doubt, but the idea here is you look like you know what you're doing.
Right. Yeah. No, absolutely. And we talk about preparation, and I mentioned how a lot of clients will make the plan. They'll say, yeah, let's write the plan, but then they don't go through the exercise piece of it. Well,
Hmm.
I think oftentimes they miss that because they think, oh, I don't have the time. I don't have time to do that.
Right.
So then how do you sort of put some, I guess, how can you explain that you don't have to necessarily go into like all the detail? What's the level of detail that you need to do when it comes to like these tabletop exercises or things like that? Sorry, it's taken me like forever to get this question out, but what I'm trying to articulate here is that how do you take somebody who says, "Hey, we're just going to do the plan. We're not going to do the actual exercises now," because they have this thought that it takes too long and they don't want waste resource time. So, to what level of detail do you have to go into these so that it's not just checking boxes, but you're actually learning something out of it?
Yeah, I appreciate the question because it's almost as if a checkbox to even do this simulation thing. It feels like, "All right, let's just do it, right?" But
Right, right.
forgive me, but you're half-assing it, right?
Yeah, totally.
You're not quite doing it right. Then what's the point? Then don't do it at all, right? So if you're going to do something, do it right. So the idea to
Yeah.
have a realistic scenario is really important. Throw some
Hmm.
curveballs. That's some unorthodox scenarios that have folks how they respond to this,
Yeah.
and really look for gaping holes. But the idea here is to practice, and customer
Yeah.
concerns, employee questions, regulatory pressures. Test the message consistency, and we call it message unity training. Make sure that there's unification and your messaging,
Yeah.
the tone, the speed, the approval workflows. What's your after action review of the what intensifies during the fog of war? What do you do? So if you just kind of go through it, and I don't know, it's just like, you can go back to sports, right? If you just kind of
Yeah.
go through
Yeah.
practice, like, and here we go, let's do it, and then a game plan. Whoa, everything speeds up. Everything's five
Right.
times as fast as you thought it was going to be. So
You're right.
but we practice it. No, you didn't.
Yeah.
You half-assed it.
Yeah. And if you practice, let me tell you, that's how you make a comeback in the fourth, like good old Caleb Williams did.
Oh
So,
my goodness, that guy.
right.
He is special. He is
What a
special.
fantastic
Yeah,
game.
I'm not a
Oh,
Bears fan, but now I am.
I'm embarrassed.
No good.
Okay, so you talk about the fog of war, and as you know, when all this chaos is happening, everybody's under pressure to just fix things.
Mhm.
What is it that leaders need to be focused on as this incident or event is unfolding when it comes to their reputation and communication?
Yeah, I like this question primarily because it's a complex response because there's two teams going on. There's one who's fixing the problem, and the other one should be communicating about the problem, right? They should be
Right.
working together, and
Yeah.
one doesn't have to happen first before the other one, right? So
Mhm.
I can't speak too much about the response from an incident side. That's your job. That's
Right.
that's
Right.
important. Oh
Right.
my God, I don't know what to do because
Yeah.
I've been part of these equations. Like, oh, that seems really complex. But
Yes.
from a communication side, a few different things to remember:
Mhm.
clarity, coordination, and credibility. Clarity, coordination, and credibility. And they need to really quickly align the internal teams around what's known. They have really be
Mhm.
very clear what's not known at this point. Who's responsible for their decisions. Yeah, and they must ensure that the company or organizations communicates early with honesty and empathy, right?
Yeah.
And rather than just kind of waiting for the perfect information or we got this thing knocked down, here it is, right? They should be really
Right.
set the tone, right?
Sure.
And then as a leader, calmness is important, right? You have to have a steady
Yeah.
hand. I like the word steady hand. Someone gave me
So
one
do
just
I.
one of the biggest compliments is says like, Casey, you're a steady hand, or reputation of us is a steady hand and all this. Like, I'm not exactly sure what that means, at least as far as literal, but metaphorically, it means you're calm, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that takes a little bit of practice. When the proverbial S hits the fan, you need to be calm, right,
Yes.
and accountable and transparent because stakeholders are watching. Yeah,
Yes.
people are paying attention, and that's when leadership plays its ultimate role. That's where you show your mettle, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that calmness is definitely something that has to be practiced.
Mm-hmm.
And a true leader, I think, shows that calmness because that also sets the tone for the entire response team.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Sure.
if if there's somebody who's just barking orders and just complete, you know, sort of sergeant, if you will, right?
Right.
They're setting the tone for the pressure and the stress that's going down to the teams, and then they are under. I mean, they're already under pressure, right?
Of course.
Especially for the person that perhaps may have pushed the wrong button to initiate things, right? Like, there's already things happening, so let's try to keep that calmness throughout the entire team.
Well, let's talk about Ben Johnson for a second, shall we?
Sure. Yeah,
But
yeah.
the coach for the Bears made her down by 18 points, and
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I'm a Lions fan, but so now you have our offensive coordinator. But
Yes.
if you watch him during the game, he was calm, and frankly, Caleb was not. Right?
Yes.
He was
Yes.
pissed. He was just like
And you
yelling
can
at his
see it on
team.
his face.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, I thought they're in trouble because when your quarterback is pissed, then. But if you look at Ben, yeah, the coach of the Bears, he
Yeah.
was, I mean, doing his thing. Obviously hiding his mouth. Showing
Yeah.
the plays, whatever. But homeboy was cool as a cucumber, and that, my
Yes.
friends, is being a good leader. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. What a great example because that is something that I noticed and I was watching the game. I told my husband, I was like, I don't know how he's like holding it together
I know.
because it was like Caleb's
Didn't look
face was
good. Didn't look
visibly,
good,
no,
right? Right.
it did
When your
not.
leader is yelling and he's had a twisted ankle and just kind of coming out, throwing stuff. And I was actually kind of disappointed. But boy, fourth quarter is a different thing for him. But
Yes,
we're getting
absolutely.
sidetracked.
I
But
know we are, we are.
there are some parallels there, right?
Yes, there
When
are.
you
Yes,
when you're in
there
that
are.
fog of war and that pressure, keep
Yes,
cool. Who's going to put your hand?
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, let's talk a little bit about after the incident has happened and we're now in recovery and trust rebuilding.
Mm.
What is the immediate response once all of this is over? Like, what does reputational recovery actually involve?
Yeah, I think a few different areas here is reputational recovery. I love that term, reputational recovery. How can you recover your reputation? But it's about proving, not promising, right? What the
Mm,
organization has learned and improved on, right?
yeah,
When they learn the lessons, right? And so,
yeah,
what can you improve on? So this involves transparent follow-up communications, visible security and investments that you're going to be doing as a company, leadership accountability, take
yeah,
ownership, a lot of different aspects here, but the ongoing engagement with customers, employees, and partners, those types of things are really important here. And stakeholders want to see concrete actions, not just statements.
yeah.
That's hollow, right? But over
Yes.
time, this consistency of rebuilding the credibility. So really, in short, here is it isn't just a press release; it's a sustained demonstration, the demonstration of trustworthiness. So you're proving
Yeah.
what you've learned.
In fact, I think the biggest example that comes to mind when I'm listening to you speak is when you go out to dinner, and let's just say there's something that goes wrong with the order or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the server comes over and they blame somebody else.
Mm.
And they tell you, right? They're like, oh, well,
That's the chef in the
Billy
back.
Bobby,
Yeah.
they did it wrong. And that's always kind of annoyed me a bit because I'm like, you're the face. You're the face of this experience right now, right? And I need you to basically own it.
Mm-hmm.
And let's not take it, I mean, let's not kick the can down the road,
That's right.
right?
That's
And
right.
I think that's kind of similar to what you're saying here, right? You're going to
Absolutely.
own it and you're going
Yep.
to prove that we can rebuild this trust.
That's right. Yeah, and now's not time to finger point.
Exactly.
Given this the sports metaphors, whatever. Like, boy, we should have made that field goal, whatever thing. Like, that's weak sauce right there. It's a team effort.
Yes,
We're going to
absolutely.
practice afterwards. Definitely, we
Yeah.
have some areas of improvement, but we we're a team.
Yeah.
We're a team.
Absolutely. And so, there's that initial proving, but then there's this long-term trust building that happens
Mm.
too. What does long-term trust building look like? What does that mean?
Yeah, that's again another really good question here. But showing progress through action, I think that's going to be really
Mhm.
important. Not
Yeah.
necessarily relitigating the incident, but really
Right.
communicating improvements. In plain
Right.
language. I mean,
Right.
while you all are very smart in what you do, the terms and the acronyms that you use are great. But really, for the customer, even the staff, using plain
Right.
language and highlighting the safeguards you've made that are now
Mhm.
in place, or tying the updates to broader commitments to customer protection, right? Those are really
Mhm.
important. We
Yeah.
lost here. We lost this game. We're going to make some huge time and improvements. But then also, let's not just go in the negative, but when done well, what do we do, right? What is the
Mhm.
messaging? We've evolved. We've invested. We're more resilient than ever. Those types of things. And if you legitimately are, proof point that. How are you more evolved?
Mhm.
How are you more invested? Really reshaping the past, right?
Yeah.
What does the
Absolutely.
long-term trust rebuilding, what is that? It's consistency over time,
Yeah.
one time, one gesture at a time.
Yeah. And internally, on the technical side, there's a lot of lessons learned that happen. And
Yes.
I think documenting those and truly sitting down as a team to talk through what those lessons were and then how can we do things differently and then actually actively doing them
Mm-hmm.
is key. So that's just
Yes.
one little tidbit from the internal technical
Yes.
side.
That's right. That's right.
Let's talk about the small guys, right? The small to mid-sized organizations that don't necessarily have large teams to control all of this. Where should they realistically start when something blows up?
Yeah, it all depends on the company for sure, but small guys have a lot to lose from this, right?
Yeah.
And that's really the key aspect. And where does this fall into place? Communications or preparations fall into place on the millions of other things they need to do. Well, just really the fundamentals,
Right.
the fundamentals that deliver the most impact, which really can mean defining really who's in charge during an incident. Who's that
Mm-hmm.
person? Let's not assume anything. Who's that
Right.
person? And then, as I mentioned before, there's a person who's taking care of the problem or fixing the problem. The other one's communicating the problem. They shouldn't really be the same person unless you're
Right.
really small and that's you're only one person shop, and maybe that is. But small organizations, right?
Right.
So who's in charge of the incident? Creating a communications plan with roles and responsibility, and drafting a few basic templates for
Yeah.
employees. That up, inside, out approach. Remember, the leadership, the employees, the customers, the media. Having that infrastructure is a good starting point, and having a tabletop exercise. At least once a year.
Yeah.
Let's go through this. Let's bring in some Chipotle, and
Right.
let's just roll up our sleeves. What would happen if? Let's clarify
Yeah.
our goals and responsibilities, our preparedness, right? And our
Absolutely.
tagline is goofy as it sounds. It hits home, but crisis preparation is 99% preparation and 1% execution.
Yeah.
99% preparation,
Absolutely.
1% execution. So if you're prepared, it's really, it makes so much more easy. So a small company can be prepared. It takes
Yeah.
time, but it doesn't take a whole lot of money. It just takes time. But boy, that, the old adage as far as, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Right.
That
Right.
is really key to all this. And I get it, selling preventative medicine to a small sized company which has not a lot of resources or time, that's tough to sell in. But boy, I'm telling you, you do not want to call us during that 11th hour and the proverbial S is hitting the fan, because it gets a lot more
Yes.
expensive, and developing an infrastructure during that time frame is nothing short of messy.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I will just put a little shout out there for these small to mid-sized organizations who think, well, that's for the big guys. It's not going
Yeah.
to happen to us. You'd be surprised because especially hackers, they tend to really look at small organizations because they know that there's not a lot of security in place, not a lot of controls in place as well. So they've used these small organizations as stepping stones to
Yep.
get to their data to then get to the bigger guys.
Yep. And can I confess, about 7 years ago, we were attacked. Our little firm
Wow.
of 14 people, right?
Yeah,
We
yeah.
were attacked, for lack of a better term, but it was oh boy, it was a phishing scam, but turned into it was almost like a double whammy of sorts. But I won't go into the details for this part,
Sure.
but it's kind of the relatability of it all. And
Yeah.
as the owner, as the leader here, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is actually happening. This
Yeah.
is potentially going to be very cost effective. Let's say a reputation firm has
Great.
information that's confidential. That
Yeah.
was tough, right? And so
Yeah.
it allowed us to, let's practice what we preach. Are we prepared for these types of things? Right?
Yeah.
What can we do to tell the customers if this goes out, our clients,
Yeah.
that their information is stable, we're okay. So we're like, oh my gosh, we're small. And this is what we practice. Let's practice what we preach, right? So I'm
Right.
going to let you know
Right.
that it does happen. And
Yeah.
we have a lot more to lose, because this could be crippling to your business. I
Absolutely.
mean, beyond crippling, it could be the end of
Shut you
your
down.
business. Yeah.
Yes,
Big businesses
exactly.
have a little bit of flexibility here. It's a black eye. It's going to hurt the bottom line, the profits and losses. But for a small to mid-sized company, this could be really
Yeah.
big damage.
Yeah, I really, really appreciate your transparency in sharing that because I say this a lot that, hey, it can happen to a smaller organization. And to have somebody that actually says, hey, yeah, no, it happened to us and it's important. And thank goodness you guys were prepared to know how to handle that as well.
I'm not going to say it was flawless, but we were
Yeah,
at least had some degree of insight, just because it's kind of what
sure.
we do. But oof, it was heartburn. That's for
Oh
sure.
my God, I could only imagine. Well, we are here at the end, and you've
Yeah.
shared so many good nuggets. You gave us this framework of what was it? It was up, inside, and out. You gave us these three C's, is what I'm calling them, of clarity, credibility, and I forgot the lot. Is it communication? So
Let's see here. I'm going to go back to my words here too, but it's clarity, coordination, and credibility.
coordination. Credibility. There you go. Okay, yes, thank you. Those are the three C's. But we always like to ask our guests to give one insightful tip. What is the one thing that you would like all of our listeners to know before we let you go here, as a takeaway when it comes to being prepared with cyber incidents and reputation?
Well, it is three things, but it's the same word. Prepare, prepare, prepare.
I love it. I love
Yeah,
it.
I can't underscore that enough. I mean, it is one of those things where I mentioned before, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. It is so critical to prepare for
Yeah.
this type. Communicate, and then last thing part, to communicate early and lead with visibly. I mean,
Yeah.
you don't want to hide behind this. It's okay to get attacked. It sucks, no doubt, but
Right.
don't hide behind it. It's almost
Yeah.
as if if something happens to you personally, you don't necessarily want to hide behind. Like this makes it happen, and if you are trying to be opaque about it or not transparent about it, then people are going to find out. So might as well
Yeah.
communicate early and then lead with visibility.
Absolutely. Prepare, prepare, prepare. Well, folks, there you have it. Casey, I know this is not the last time we're going to have you on the show
Oh,
because we're
good.
already talking about a couple of other episodes to have. So you guys are going to hear from him again. So thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. Why don't you let our listeners know how they can find you and where they can find Reputation Us?
Great. Well, our email is probably the best way of doing it. It's contact@reputationus.com. So it's the word reputationus.com. And our website is reputationus.com. And it's a lot of different information about how to respond and our blogs, different tips along the way. But yeah, that's the best way to get a hold
Yeah.
of us. But don't wait
And
till the crisis happens. Contact us ahead of time.
yes, and in fact, that is something I was going to say is that we build information security programs. You guys help with reputation risk. All of these things are very proactive measures. And
Hmm.
it's so important to be proactive versus reactive because when you're trying to build the plane while it's flying, it's going to be a little bit of a shit show. Okay.
Yep. Truer words have never been spoken. Yes.
I did want to also just talk about, or at least give you a plug on this 2026, the top 10 reputation risks
Oh
and
yeah.
impact report that you've published. Please just let's give it a little plug to that
Oh,
because
thank you.
it's such a great report.
Yeah, so every year we look at kind of, I don't know, crystal ball where the risks are, right? And it's
Mhm.
hard to really predict, but the idea here is that reputation is a risk, as I mentioned at the very beginning, and what's ahead here. And so we put together the top 10 every year, and guess what? Number one still is cybersecurity. It's,
Cybersecurity,
it's a
yes.
risk. And why is it a risk? Well, we outline that and that, but also the impact and then what
Mhm.
action should be taken. So encourage your listeners to download the risks, and then if you have questions along the way as what those are, because it's every organization, from a law firm to a police department to a mid-sized company, there's
Yeah.
risks everywhere. They just happen to have a different face and look to it all, but there are things you can do to mitigate against those damages ahead of time. So
Yes, and we will link all of these things in the show notes, but I'll give you a little teaser. You need to go and look at what number three is, especially with how popular it is these days. And so definitely go out there and get it. I'll link it on our website as well. Hey, if you want to get in touch with Minerva Consulting, you can contact us at let's talk at minervaconsultinginc.com. You can go to our website at minervaconsultinginc.com. And before we sign off here, as usual, I'd like to ask our listeners to take three quick next steps. Number one, subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss an episode. Leave a rating, add a comment. Casey, thank you so much for being here. Can't wait to have you back and looking forward to all the other things we're going to get into this year.